Hello class, this is Teacher Daisy. For today's lesson, we are going to learn about the story entitled How Odin Lost His Eye. Are you ready? So if you are ready, then I am more than ready and happy to help you explore the story How Odin Lost His Eye. So let us start. So first things first, okay. The most essential learning competency that you are going to learn today is to appraise the unity of plot, setting, and characterization in a material viewed to achieve the writer's purpose. Now let us build your vocabulary. Okay, so the first word that we are going to learn is the word perch. Now say it with me. Say perch. It means support consisting of a branch or rod that serves as a resting place, especially for a bird. Example, the lovely birds watch us from their perch all night long. Next word is flit. Say it with me. Flit. To remove swiftly and lightly. Example, brightly colored butterflies flit around the scented flowers. Next word, pluck. Say pluck. Take hold of something and quickly remove it from its place. Example, do you pluck your eyebrows? Next word, we have glorious. Everybody say glorious. It means having worthy of or bringing fame or admiration. Example, the greater the challenges, the more glorious the victory. Next word, we have sacrifice. Everybody say sacrifice. It means an act of giving up something valued for the sake of something else. Example, during the olden times, an animal was offered as a sacrifice. Next word, we have crouch. I want everybody to say it with me. Say crouch. It means to adapt a position where the knees are bent and the upper body is brought forward and down, sometimes to avoid detection or to defend oneself. Example, John dropped to the ground in a crouch to avoid being seen. Next word, we have forge. Say it with me. Forge. It means to make or shape by hitting it in a fire or a furnace and hammering it. Example, the local smith forges swords and knives. Next word, we have gloomy. It means dark or poorly lit, especially so as to appear depressing or frightening. Example, the gloomy atmosphere affects his thoughts and memories. Next word, we have cloak. It means an outdoor overgarment, typically sleeveless, that hangs loosely from the shoulder. Example, the little kid is wearing a red cloak with a hood. Okay, last but not the least, the word stride. To walk with long decisive steps in a special direction. Example, he walked in with a confident, manly stride. So I hope you learned the 10 new words. Next, we have the elements of the story. So during your previous years, we have discussed the different elements of a short story. So let's do a recap. Okay, the first element of the story is called setting. It refers to the time, place, and circumstances of the action of a literary, dramatic, or cinematic work. For the story How Odin Lost His Eye, our setting is in Asgard, the kingdom of Odin. Next is we have the characters. These are the people, animals, or inanimate beings that play roles in the story. We have Odin, the brave and selfless king of Asgard. We also have Mimir, the guardian of the well who asked for a sacrifice from Odin. We have Balder, Odin's dear and precious son. Then we have the Frost Giants. These are the evil who hate Odin and all his works. We also have the Elves. These are the tiny people who live between heaven and earth. We have the ugly dwarfs, the ones who live in the heart of mountains. Now, before we start with the story, let us read the guide questions, which you will be answering after we finish reading the story. The first question is, describe Odin. What trait or value is evident in his lines, actions, and perspectives? Explain. The second question, are the setting, characters, and events in the story realistic? How did they contribute to your overall impression about the story? What lesson did you learn from the story? What event from the story made you realize such lesson? Fourth question, what is the central idea of the story and what made you say so? And last but not the least, what do you think is the author's main purpose of writing the story? Was his purpose achieved? Explain your answer. Now, we are going to read the story together. I'm going to read it aloud and you read after me. So are we ready? I hope you are ready. So let's start reading the story. How Odin Lost His Eye, retold by Catherine F. Silo. Once the world was still very young. Odin sat on his throne in the most beautiful palace in Asgard. His throne was so high that he could see over all 3 parts of the world from where he sat. On his head, he wore a helmet shaped like an eagle. On his shoulder perched 2 black ravens called Memory and Thought. And at his feet crouched 2 snarling wolves. The great king gazed thoughtfully down on the earth below him. He had made the green land that stretched out before his eyes. With the help of the other gods, he had made men and women who lived on that earth. And he felt truly like the All-Father he was called. The fair elves had promised they would help his children of the earth. The elves were tiny people who lived between heaven and earth. They were so small that they flit about doing their work unseen. Odin knew that they were the artists who painted the flowers and made the beds for the streets. They took care of all the bees and butterflies, and it was the elves that brought the gentle rain and sunshine to the earth. Even the ugly dwarfs who lived in the heart of the mountains agreed to help. They forged iron and metals, made tools and weapons. They dug gold and silver and beautiful jewels out of the earth. Sometimes, they even cut the grain and ground the flour for the farmers on the earth. All seemed to be going well. Odin found it hard to think of evil times, but he knew that the frost giants were only waiting for the chance to bring trouble to his children. They were the ones who brought cold and ice to the world and shook the earth in anger. They hated Odin and all the works of the gods. And from high on his throne, Odin looked down beyond the earth, deep into the gloomy land of his enemies. He saw dark figures of huge men moving about. They looked like evil shadows. He, the king of gods, needs to have more wisdom. It was not enough just to see his enemies. He ought to know more about them. So Odin wrapped his tall figure in a blue cloak. Down from his throne, he climbed. Down the broad rainbow bridge, he strode and across the green earth till he came to one of the roots of the great evergreen tree. There, close by the tree, was a well full of clear water. Its surface was so still, it was like a mirror. In it, one could see pictures of things that had happened and things that were going to happen. But beside the well sat an old man. His face was aligned with the troubles of the world. His name was Mimir, which means memory. No one, not even the great Odin, could see the pictures in the well unless he first drank some of its water. Only Mimir could give the magic drink. Aged Mimir, Odin said to the old man, you who hold the knowledge of the past and the future in your magic waters, let me have but one sip. Then I can know enough to protect the men and women of the earth from the hate of the giants. Mimir looked kindly at Odin, but he did not smile. Although he spoke softly, his voice was so deep it reminded Odin of the distant roar of the ocean. The price of one drink from this well is not cheap, Mimir said. And once you have drunk and gazed into the mirror of life, you may wish you had not. For sorrow and death, as well as joy, are pictured there, so you should think again before you ask to drink. But once the king of the gods had made up his mind, nothing could change it. He was not afraid to look upon sorrow and death. What is your price, aged Mimir? Odin asked. You are great and good, Odin, answered Mimir. You have worked hard to make the world. Only those who know hard work may drink from my well. However, that is not enough. What have you given up that is very dear to you? What have you sacrificed? The price of a drink must be a great sacrifice. Are you still willing to pay the price? What could the king of the gods sacrifice? What was more dear to him? Odin thought of his handsome son, Fulero, whom he loved the most in the world. To give up his son would be like giving up life and all that was wonderful around him. Odin stood silent before Mimir. Indeed, that would be a high price. Then Mimir spoke again. He had read Odin's thoughts. No, I am not asking for your dear son. The fates say his life must be short, but he has time yet to live and bring happiness to the gods and the world. I ask for one of your eyes. Odin put his hands up to his bright blue eyes. Those two eyes had gazed across the world from his high throne in the shining city of the gods. His eyes had taught him what was good and beautiful, what was evil and ugly. But those eyes had also seen his children, the men and women of the earth, struggling against the hate of the giants. One eye was a small sacrifice to win knowledge of how to help them. And without another thought, Odin plucked out one of his blue eyes and handed it to Mimir, and gave Odin a horn full of the waters of his well. Drink deeply, brave king, so you may see all that you wish in the mirror of life. His lips and drank. Then he knelt by the edge of the well and watched the pictures passing across its still and silent surface. When he stood up again, he sighed, for it was as Mimir had said. He had seen sorrow and death, as well as joy. It was only the glorious promise at the end that gave him courage to go on. So Odin, the great king of the gods, became one-eyed. If you can find Mimir's well, you will see Odin's blue eye resting at the bottom. It is there to remind men and women of the great sacrifice he made for them. The end. So, did you understand the story? So at this point, we are going to continue with another element of the short story, It's called theme. So the theme of our story is all about sacrificing love. Have you ever made a sacrifice for a loved one? Next is the moral or lesson of the story. To truly, fully, completely love, one needs to sacrifice. Do you agree with our moral or lesson?
Thank you. Don't forget to like and subscribe.